Before we dive into this wild ride, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Whether it's a quiet cul-de-sac in Arizona, a busy apartment block in New York, or a peaceful lakeside cabin up in Minnesota. I love hearing just how far these Karen tales of chaos and karma can travel. The first thing you hear is the screech of tires, sharp enough to cut through the quiet of the morning. Then comes the metallic crunch, the thud of something large and heavy colliding with an object that refuses to yield. The sound rolls across the ranch road like a gunshot. I'm standing on my porch, a mug of steaming coffee in hand, watching the spectacle unfold. Her SUV, painted in gaudy black and white with the words HOA Police stenciled on the side, is nose first in my brand new mailbox. Smoke rises from the hood, and the windshield is a cracked spiderweb. The mailbox? Not even a scratch. She throws open the driver's side door, stumbling out like a drunken queen stripped of her crown. Her name is Lauren, 40 years old, built like a bulldozer and carrying the same subtlety. Her tactical vest bulges awkwardly over her floral pattern blouse, and her hair is tied into a tight bun that shakes loose as she waves her arms. She screams across the distance, red-faced, her voice a mix of fury and disbelief. I just sip my coffee, calm as if I'm watching a morning news broadcast. The neighbors are peeking out now, phones in their hands, ready to capture another Lauren meltdown. I can't help but smile. Because if you think this story starts here, with her car smoking in my yard, you'd be wrong. This is just the payoff. Let me take you back to how it all began. It was 3 months earlier, a still Saturday morning, when the only sound should have been birdsong and the rustle of wind through the tall grass. Instead, I found my mailbox hanging limp on its post, crushed and twisted like a soda can. The red flag was snapped off, lying in the dirt. Tire tracks curved from the edge of the road right into it, fresh and deep. I crouched down, brushing the splintered wood, and found flecks of white paint embedded in the shards. SUV paint. I didn't need a detective to tell me who did it. There was only one person in this neighborhood who drove around in an SUV marked like some self-made sheriff. Lauren, the woman who called herself the HOA cop. She was nothing more than a glorified security hire, but she strutted through the neighborhood as if she owned it. Clip-on badge, tacky tactical vest, walkie-talkie pressed against her mouth every 5 minutes. She was a parody of law enforcement. Yet, somehow, she believed her role gave her authority over every fence post, driveway light, and mailbox in the subdivision. I replaced the mailbox that weekend, a plain wooden post and standard steel box. A simple fix. At first, I told myself maybe she hadn't meant to hit it. Maybe she clipped it by accident while swerving around a delivery truck. I wanted to believe it was nothing more than a careless mistake. But by the next Thursday morning, when I stepped outside, I found the new mailbox flattened even worse than before. This time, I heard laughter. Across the road, Lauren sat behind the wheel of her SUV, windows rolled down. She leaned her elbow out, sunglasses perched low on her nose, smirking at me. The smell of burnt rubber still hung in the air. I walked to the edge of my driveway, keeping my voice even. "Did you just hit my mailbox?" She tilted her head back and laughed, a shrill sound that grated against the morning air. "Oh, that little thing? It was in the way. Didn't you know? These roads belong to the HOA. That box shouldn't even be there." I clenched my jaw. "It's a federal mailbox. It belongs there." She shrugged, tapping her badge with mock importance. "Not if I say otherwise. Move it or I'll keep running it over. Your choice." Then she revved the engine and sped off, gravel spitting from her tires. That was the first time I realized she wasn't careless. She was deliberate. Over the following weeks, she made it a personal mission. I replaced the mailbox again, sturdier this time, and within days she crushed it with surgical precision. Each time, she drove slower past my house afterward, making sure I saw her smug grin. Once I caught her writing a fake citation, a sheet of paper with HOA letterhead she probably printed at home, taped right onto the broken post. Violation, unauthorized mailbox installation. The neighbors noticed too. At the community pool, whispers rippled. "She's gone off the deep end," one muttered. "She threatened to fine me for planting roses." Another sighed. She called me at midnight to complain my porch light was too bright. Said she could write me up. But when anyone pushed back, Lauren doubled down, waving her badge and barking about HOA rules nobody had ever heard of. Most people gave up. They were tired, intimidated, or simply didn't want the trouble. I wasn't about to give up. I went to the HOA board, sat in front of their folding tables in that stuffy meeting room, and laid out everything. Photos of the damage, the fake citations, the harassment. They shifted uncomfortably, but offered nothing more than excuses. She's our security detail, one said. Let her handle things her way. She keeps order. Order? She was chaos on wheels. I went to the local police next, hoping they'd take it seriously. Instead, the officer at the desk leaned back in his chair, lips twisted in mild amusement. Mailbox trouble? Sounds like a civil HOA dispute. Not really our jurisdiction, sir. In other words, I was on my own. Lauren must have sensed my frustration because she grew bolder. Each evening, her SUV roared past my driveway, headlights sweeping over the porch like searchlights. Sometimes she slowed to a crawl, rolling down the window just long enough to sneer, still waiting for you to move that mailbox. Other times she slammed the gas, tires screeching, daring me to respond. Neighbors started avoiding her altogether, crossing streets rather than risk confrontation. Some whispered that she was drunk with power, that she believed the badge she bought online made her invincible. I knew better. Power like hers wasn't invincible. It was fragile, desperate, a mask stretched thin over insecurity. And nothing exposed it faster than someone refusing to be afraid. The fourth time I replaced my mailbox, I did it quietly, in the dead of night. No announcement, no visible frustration, just the steady scrape of a shovel and the smell of fresh earth. When it stood again by morning, Lauren drove by slower than ever, her eyes narrow behind those ridiculous sunglasses. She didn't laugh this time. She just stared, lips pursed, and then drove off without a word. That silence told me everything. She wasn't finished. She was planning something bigger. I stood at the end of my driveway that morning, coffee warm in my hand, staring at the crooked tire tracks that cut across my yard. The grass was crushed flat, the soil churned. The message was clear. She wanted a war. And if she wanted one, she was going to get it, but not the way she expected. I smiled to myself, a low laugh rumbling in my throat, as the sun rose over the fields. She thought she'd won by scaring everyone else into silence. She thought smashing wood and steel made her untouchable. But she didn't understand the simplest truth. I was done playing defense. The next move was mine, and I was going to make sure it was one she would never forget. When I finally decided to fight back, it wasn't with shouting or threats. Shouting wouldn't work against someone like Lauren. She thrived on chaos, fed off the sound of other people breaking. No, what she couldn't handle was silence, strategic, deliberate silence. The kind that hides a storm behind a calm face. I started with research. Nights were spent at the kitchen table, laptop glowing, piles of printouts stacked high. Federal statutes, HOA bylaws, postal regulations. I combed through every line like a surgeon with a scalpel. It didn't take long to find the opening I needed. The law was crystal clear. Any approved mailbox, properly installed on personal property, was protected under federal jurisdiction. Destroying one wasn't an HOA infraction. It was a federal crime. Lauren wasn't bending rules. She was breaking them. And so I planned. A normal man might have just bought another mailbox and prayed she'd move on. But I was past the point of prayer. Every crash, every smirk from her SUV window had sharpened my resolve. If she wanted to play demolition derby with my property, then I would build something that could withstand her worst. The idea came one night as I stared at the twisted ruins of mailbox number 4. The jagged shards of what seemed almost pitiful, lying in the grass. What if I thought the mailbox wasn't fragile at all? What if it was stronger than the car? What if the next time she tried to destroy it, she destroyed herself instead? The plan took root in that moment, clear and unshakable. I would build a fortress disguised as a mailbox. Construction began the following weekend. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not even the neighbor who waved from across the street as I unloaded steel sheets from my truck. The air smelled like hot iron as I cut the metal, sparks flying from a grinder. Each clang of hammer against steel echoed across the yard, a rhythm of defiance. I sunk a post hole 4 feet deep, filled it with rebar and concrete thick enough to anchor a small bridge. When the concrete cured, I wrapped it in welded steel plating, leaving no weak point exposed. Over this, I mounted a standard black mailbox, nothing flashy, nothing suspicious. To the casual eye, it looked ordinary. To anyone who knew better, it was a monument. By the time I finished, sweat drenched my shirt and dust clung to my skin. I stood back, surveying the creation. It looked deceptively plain. Yet beneath its humble surface lay a tank's backbone. I imagined her SUV slamming into it, metal folding like paper against unyielding steel. The thought alone brought a grim smile to my face. But a trap is useless without proof. That's where the cameras came in. I mounted 2 hidden lenses under the porch awning, angled perfectly to capture the road and my mailbox in wide, unbroken view. Motion sensors would trigger them instantly. If Lauren tried again, there would be no denying what happened. Evidence would speak louder than my words ever could. Days passed. Lauren's SUV rolled by again and again, circling like a predator testing its prey. Sometimes she slowed, eyes narrowing at the mailbox, as if sensing something different about it. Other times she gunned the engine, roaring past in a blur of noise and dust. But she never touched it. Not yet. The neighborhood buzzed with quiet curiosity. People stopped on their morning walks, staring at the new post. "Looks solid," one muttered. Another whispered, "Think she'll try again?" I only answered with a shrug and a faint smile. Inside, I was waiting, nerves wound tight like coiled wire. One night, I spotted her parked at the corner, engine idling, headlights off. She sat there for 15 minutes, just watching my property. My heart beat steady, but inside I could feel the tension sharpen. She knew. She wanted to strike, but she was holding back, calculating. That meant the blow, when it came, would be harder than ever. It arrived 1 week later, just after sunrise. The sky was still painted in soft oranges, the ranch air cool and crisp. I stepped onto my porch with a fresh mug of coffee, steam curling upward. From a distance came the low growl of an engine. I didn't need to look to know who it was. The growl rose to a roar, the kind of reckless acceleration meant to intimidate. Gravel spat from her tires as Lauren's SUV tore down the road, veering toward my property with deliberate aim. I watched unmoving, my pulse steady in a way that surprised me. Her headlights locked onto the mailbox, like a predator fixing on its prey. She wasn't swerving by accident this time. She was charging straight for it, pedals slammed to the floor. Her face was visible even through the windshield, gritted teeth, eyes blazing, a twisted smile tugging at her lips. She was ready to enjoy this. Then came the impact. The collision cracked through the air like thunder. Metal crunched, glass exploded, rubber screeched against the pavement. Her SUV's hood crumpled inward, folding like tin foil against the immovable steel of the mailbox. The airbags burst open, muffling her scream with a violent hiss. The smell of burnt oil and smoke filled the air, carried by the morning breeze. I stood frozen, not with shock, but with grim satisfaction. The mailbox remained untouched, upright and resolute, as if mocking her effort. The SUV, on the other hand, sagged forward, steam pouring from the twisted remains of its engine. The driver's side door swung open with a metallic groan, and Lauren stumbled out, her tactical vest riding up awkwardly as she clutched at the doorframe. Her face was red, hair disheveled, sunglasses missing. She pointed a trembling finger at me, her voice hoarse, but still carrying that same arrogance. "You sabotaged me. You tried to kill me." I lifted my mug, letting the steam drift lazily into the morning light. "Mailbox looks fine to me." Her voice rose to a shriek, words tumbling into incoherence. Behind her, neighbors emerged from their houses, drawn by the crash. Phones lifted, recording every second as she ranted and raved, spittle flying from her mouth. The more she screamed, the calmer I became. The camera on my porch light blinked silently, capturing it all. She stomped toward the mailbox, slapping its side with her palm as though proving something. It didn't move an inch. Her SUV, however, hissed and dripped oil onto the asphalt, a pathetic monument to her arrogance. The crowd of neighbors grew, murmurs rippling through them. Some shook their heads, others whispered, all while recording her meltdown. Lauren spun in circles, waving her arms, shouting about conspiracies, about how I had set her up, how the HOA had the real authority, not the law. I sipped my coffee again, letting the bitter taste settle on my tongue. The morning sun was warm now, spilling across the scene with an almost cinematic glow. Everything felt suspended, a tableau frozen in time. The destroyed SUV, the indestructible mailbox, the red-faced woman screaming at ghosts, and me, calm as a stone in the storm. But I knew this wasn't over. Her car was ruined, her pride dented, but her rage wasn't finished. She was too far gone, too consumed by her delusion of power to recognize defeat. This moment was only the spark. The real fire, the reckoning, was still on its way, and I was ready to let it burn. Lauren's shrieking filled the air like the cry of some cornered animal, guttural and desperate. She clutched her crumpled vest, pointing wildly at the mailbox, then at me, then back at the wreckage of her SUV, as if the world might suddenly agree with her story if she shouted loud enough. He rigged it, she screamed. He trapped me. This is attempted murder. The neighbors weren't buying it. Phones stayed raised, steady in their hands, recording every flailing gesture. I could hear the whispers moving through the crowd, sharp and unrelenting. She aimed right at it. Look at her car, it's totaled. He didn't do a thing. She did this to herself. The murmurs swelled, becoming a tide of judgment that not even her shrill voice could drown out. Still, she persisted, stomping toward me, face twisted into a mask of fury. You think this is funny, she snarled, spit flying. You think you can humiliate me? I didn't move. My coffee was still warm in my hand, steam curling into the sunlight. I kept my voice calm, almost conversational. You humiliated yourself. The crowd chuckled softly at that, a ripple of laughter she couldn't ignore. Her eyes widened, panic creeping in where arrogance once lived. She spun back toward her SUV, as if the crumpled machine could somehow defend her honor. Instead, it hissed and dripped fluids onto the road, sagging like a wounded beast. That's when she made her fatal mistake. She pulled out her radio, the cheap walkie-talkie she paraded around as a symbol of her authority, and barked into it. Officer down. Officer under attack. Respond immediately. Her voice cracked with desperation, a woman trying to conjure legitimacy from thin air. The crowd gasped. Someone muttered, "Is she serious?" But the real officers were already on their way. Sirens wailed in the distance, the sound cutting through the neighborhood like a blade. Lauren straightened, as if salvation itself was racing toward her. She fixed me with a look of triumph, whispering under her breath, "Now you're done." I stayed exactly where I was, leaning against the porch rail, letting the tension spool tighter. The sirens grew louder, closer, until finally 2 vehicles rounded the corner. Not police cruisers. Federal inspection units. White lettering across the side. United States Postal Inspection Service. Lauren's jaw dropped. For a moment, she looked almost childlike, caught in a lie too big to control. Then she tried to recover, waving frantically as the inspectors stepped out. "Over here. Arrest him. He set this up. He's the criminal." The inspectors didn't rush to her aid. They walked with steady, deliberate steps, their eyes scanning the scene with professional detachment. One of them, a tall man with a clipboard tucked under his arm, crouched near the ruined SUV. He touched the twisted bumper, then turned to the perfectly intact mailbox. "Looks like a deliberate impact," he said coolly. Lauren's face drained of color. No, he reinforced it illegally. That's entrapment. He tried to kill me." I raised a hand, motioning calmly toward my porch camera. "Everything's recorded. You'll want to see it." The inspector nodded, stepping past Lauren as if she weren't even there. I played the footage for him, clear, undeniable video of her SUV accelerating, wheels angled directly at the mailbox, her expression twisted with malicious intent. The inspector's brow furrowed, his pen scribbling across the clipboard. Lauren lunged toward him, grabbing at his sleeve. "Don't listen to him. I'm an officer. This is my jurisdiction." He pulled his arm free, expression sharp. "You're not an officer. You're a liability, and destroying a mailbox is a federal offense." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The neighbors gasped, some even cheered. Lauren shook her head violently, hair whipping loose from her bun. No, I run this neighborhood. I keep order. You can't do this to me." But they could. And they did. 2 inspectors stepped forward, handcuffs flashing in the sunlight. Lauren staggered back, her bravado cracking into raw fear. "Don't you dare touch me. I'll sue all of you. I'll have your jobs." Her voice rose higher, shriller, but it didn't stop the cold steel from snapping around her wrists. The click echoed like punctuation at the end of a rain. The neighbors erupted in applause. Phones captured every second. Her red face, her sputtering curses, her collapse from queen to clown in the span of a heartbeat. As they walked her to the inspection vehicle, she twisted her neck to scream at me one last time. "This isn't over. I'll be back. I'll make you pay." I raised my mug again, a faint smile curling my lips. "Mail's delivered every day, Lauren. You won't be." The crowd laughed, the sound swelling as the vehicle doors slammed shut and the caravan drove away, taking her with them. The days that followed were quiet, peaceful in a way I hadn't realized I'd missed. The HOA board, scrambling to distance themselves, issued a statement claiming Lauren had acted alone, without authorization. They stripped her of the cop title she had clung to, revoked her so-called license, and barred her from holding any position of authority again. Her SUV was declared a total loss, and when she tried to file an insurance claim, it was denied outright. Intentional damage, they said. She was left with nothing but fines, charges, and the weight of public humiliation. The footage went viral online, shared across the community and beyond. "Mailbox of Justice," one headline called it. Comments poured in, strangers praising the patience it took to endure her antics, and the poetic justice of her downfall. My mailbox, once a constant target, now stood untouched, respected, even admired. Neighbors stopped me on their morning walks to shake my hand, thanking me for standing up when they couldn't. But victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like balance restored. The morning air was lighter, the coffee tasted richer, and the road was finally free of her headlights sweeping across my porch. One evening, I walked down the driveway, hand brushing the cool steel of the mailbox. It stood firm, unyielding, the same way it had when she tried to destroy it. It wasn't just a mailbox anymore. It was a reminder that bullies, no matter how loud or entitled, eventually collapse under the weight of their own arrogance. I glanced at the horizon, the sky painted gold by the setting sun. For the first time in months, I felt no eyes watching from the shadows, no growl of an engine circling like a predator. Only silence. Yet part of me knew stories like this never truly end. People like Lauren don't vanish quietly. They fester, plot, and search for new places to wield their broken sense of power. But whether she tried to claw her way back here or somewhere else, she would always carry the mark of this defeat. She would always be the woman who lost a battle to a mailbox. I turned back toward the house, the porch light flicking on automatically as I reached the steps. The neighborhood had settled, the balance restored, but the memory of her downfall would remain etched into its streets forever. And as I sipped my coffee under the fading light, I couldn't help but smile. Justice doesn't always wear a badge or carry a gun. Sometimes it stands at the end of a driveway, silent and indestructible, waiting for arrogance to crash headfirst into it. And just like that, the chaos was over. The so-called HOA cop who thought she could bully me, wreck my property, and walk away with a smirk finally faced the kind of justice she never saw coming. Her car was ruined, her authority shattered, and her reputation dragged out into the daylight for everyone to see. as I stood there with my coffee in hand, watching the inspectors load her into the back of their vehicle. I couldn't help but feel that the mailbox had become more than just steel and concrete. It was a symbol that sometimes the truth holds firm no matter how hard someone tries to smash it. If you enjoyed this wild story, make sure to hit that like button, leave a comment about what you would have done in my shoes, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next crazy tale.